have a chance. Richarlison cuts it back. Oh, what a goal! First up! It's just the 5th minute.
Still Lewandowski. Still Doski. Finds Dembele, and Dembele scores an equaliser. What a pass from Lewandowski. He has been the best player. He has actually got 2 assists. One of Gavi's goal and now Dembele's goal.
And City wins! City won the match. Manchester City won the match.
Hello everybody, this is Brisbane05Blaster here and welcome to the postseason of this tournament as we have finished the second season of Brisbane05Blaster World Club Cup. Sorry guys, I'm finally back after almost a month. I have literally been off, I couldn't make any videos because I had to prepare for my assessments and such. They were very hectic, so I had to stay focused. And plus I was literally under the weather, so I wasn't, focused on what I was, doing. And when I'm under the weather, I kind of lose my motivation, so that's why. But here I am, I'm back after so long. But anyway guys, this is of course the 16 teams that participate in the tournament. But let's just start with the round of 16, as it started with Bayer Leverkusen taking on AS Roma. Some people said that Leverkusen was supposed to steamroll this Italian team because they are the favourites and they made to the quarterfinals last season around. However, Roma actually upsetted them. They had other plans, as Del Vecchio scored the opening goal in the 8th minute. And then of course the Italian intelligence Francesco Totti scored the goal in the 68th minute, which gave Roma a chance to, which gave Roma the 2-0 lead over Bayer Leverkusen. And yeah, they managed to prevail through against Leverkusen and moved on to the quarterfinals. And yeah, I'll be right back. Just need to get rid of something, okay? Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry guys, sometimes my PC is not that, it's very hard to record. So yeah, that's why I'm trying to make it as clean as possible, try to see it. But anyway guys, after the first match, we move on to the second match, as it is FC Sigma Olomouc taking on FC Lorient. And as you can see, both these sides, they were supposed to actually, it was neck and neck. Vilcek actually scored the equalizing goal, but Boad actually scored the opening goal in the 12th minute, followed by that Stanislav Vilcek scoring the equalizing goal in the 29th minute. But of course, after that, it has literally been helter-skelter. No goals after that. Chances were there, but just not the goals. It all went to penalties, and FC Sigma Olomouc managed to prevail that, winning the game 7-6 on penalties, beating FC Lorient. And now we move on to match 3, and that is Sporting Lisbon taking on Manchester United. And as you can see, it was very close. João Pinto actually, well, basically, before I get to the player there, but Sporting Lisbon actually had history versing against Man United. Of course, Ronaldo versed his future club, and they actually won that game in real life. That was a friendly game, but now it's a round of 16 tournament, and they actually followed that Ronaldo's magical win, with of course João Pinto scoring the opening goal. Andy Cole actually scored the equalizing goal, but of course João Pinto scored the match-winning goal in the golden goal, 120th with added time. So yep, that's how Sporting Lisbon managed to prevail, being the third team in the quarterfinals. And then we move on to Marseille taking on Piacenza, a newly team here. Of course, Bakayoko had a masterclass, scored 2 goals. Poggi did actually score the goal of the tournament. Of course, scored it from literally after the cross, like after the midline here. And he thought that Piacenza had the chance to actually get back in the game, but that was literally the only goal. They scored the goal in the 49th minute, but that was it. Piacenza got knocked out and Marseille move on to the quarterfinals. And then we move on to match 5, which is Lecce taking on Barcelona. Despite Barcelona being the runner-ups, of course, they were literally on a redemption arc since they lost to Real Madrid in last season's grand final. And they did just that, beating Lecce relatively 4-0 thanks to a hat-trick performance by Patrick Kluivert. and then Mark Overmars scoring the only goal. Like the only goal apart from Kluivert's masterclass performance. And because of this, Barcelona move on. And then we move on to Bayern Munich taking on Leicester City. And Leicester City, as usual, always likes to come up clutch against big teams. And they did just that. Of course, Yeremy scored the goal in the opening goal in the 4th minute, sorry. And then Ade Akinbi turned into prime Cristiano Ronaldo, and he actually scored the equalizing goal in the 22nd minute and then the match-winning goal in the 79th minute, which made Leicester City the 6th team to move into the quarterfinals. And then we move on to the most underrated matchups, which is between Middlesbrough and Hellas Verona, which is at the Riverside Park and Riverside Stadium. Of course, Hellas Verona didn't actually start off well, with Hamilton Rickard scoring the opening goal in the 10th minute, but then Cossato scored a clutch. Despite Hellas Verona not having Arlton, who has been literally the super sub and the savior for Hellas Verona, Cossato was literally the new man to actually come clutch by scoring the goal in the 34th minute and scoring the match-winning goal in the 70th minute. And then, of course, last match is between Ipswich Town taking on Real Madrid, the defending champions. Of course, it was completely one-sided. Don't have to talk straight about it. Of course, Raul scored the opening goal in the 10th minute. Then Luis Figo scored the goal in the 24th. Fernando Hierro scored the goal in the 33rd. Well, Luis Figo scored the goal in the 23rd minute. Then Hierro scored the goal in the 33rd minute, which is the penalty. And then it was 3-0. Real Madrid having the big lead over Ipswich Town. And then they kept on going. Raul scored the second goal for himself. He scored his second goal and 4th goal for Real Madrid in the 53rd minute. And then he scored a hat-trick, 57th minute for Raul. And then Stewart did score the consolation goal for Ipswich Town. But it wasn't enough, as Real Madrid managed to blaze past this English team. And that's it. Real Madrid become the last team to move into the quarterfinals. And now we move on to the quarterfinals, which is the Elite 8 teams. And as you can see, it was between Roma and Sigma Olomouc. And somehow, the Czech Republic side did surprise by beating the Italian side 3-2 thanks to, Del Vecchio actually opened the account and opened the scoreline for these two sides. Had a slim lead over Sigma Olomouc, but then Vilcek scored the equalizing goal. Then Pavel Hapal scored a brace in the 40th and 43rd minute. Del Vecchio did score the only goal in the second half, but that wasn't enough, as Sigma Olomouc managed to hold on against the Italian giants. And that is when we move on to match 2, which started to become completely turned into a battlefield, as Sporting Lisbon took on Marseille. They managed to defeat Marseille 6-2 after seeing João Pinto's magnificent 4-goal performance. And of course, Yordanov and Bento scored the only players to actually contribute since the João Pinto masterclass. Belmadi and Bakayoko were the only players to score the 2 consolation goals for Marseille, but it wasn't enough, as Sporting Lisbon steamrolled the French giants. And then match 3, we move on to Barcelona taking on Leicester City. Patrick Kluivert, do I have any words here to say? Kluivert literally just scores a hat-trick. This guy likes to score goals for breakfast. And then, of course, Dean Sturridge scored the only goal for Leicester City. Leicester City did actually made far in the last tournament, but not this time, as they crash out in the quarterfinals, losing to Barcelona 3-1. And then we move on to match 4, which has by far been one of the best games ever. And that too, a most shocking performance by Real Madrid. Hellas Verona were on fire, with Cossato scoring the opening goal. Gilardino scored the second goal for Hellas Verona in the 52nd minute. Raul scored the goal, which would bring Real Madrid back into the game. But Gilardino just finished it off 10 minutes later in the 72nd minute, which made sure that Hellas Verona would get there in no time. And that means that Real Madrid's chance of going back-to-back is completely finished and tarnished, as it's now out of reach for them. They're back-to-back. Their chance of coming back-to-back is a failure, as they crash out in the quarterfinals, losing to Hellas Verona 3-1. And now we move on to the semi-finals, which is between Sigma Olomouc and Sporting Lisbon. And that was the game of the season, by the way. So yeah, before we get to the semi-finals, I might need to actually go somewhere. So I'll be right back, guys. Alright guys, we're back, and as you can see, this game has completely opened my eyes. As Pavel Hapal, he was the man that actually kept on going. João Pinto was the man who's actually scoring goals for fun. The only player to be on the score sheet for Sporting Lisbon. But they didn't lose. They actually won because João Pinto single-handedly got Sporting Lisbon to the grand final. Pavel Hapal scored a brace. João Pinto equalized the game twice, but then he actually took the lead. Zadrahal to equalize it for Sigma Olomouc, and then João Pinto scored the match-winning goal, which meant that João Pinto is now the first player to score 10 goals. And then we move on to what was a humiliation match for Barcelona as they take on Hellas Verona. And that by far has been one of the biggest upsets apart from the Real Madrid game. Barcelona have endured a huge defeat to an Italian giant. And that was actually the rematch of the last season semi-final. The first one. But we're going to start with Cosato, who scored the opening goal. Emiliano Salvetti scored the second goal for Hellas Verona. Then Gilardino scored the third goal. Overmars scored one goal. He scored 2 goals. He was literally the only player to bring back the game for Barcelona. But completely it's been Cosato, Gilardino, who has been literally stealing the show for Hellas Verona. And then Odo scored an outrageous free kick against Barcelona. You've already known this one. You've already seen that game. That was outrageous. Well, some of you have seen this game. And that was completely mind-boggling here. Massimo Odo. Which meant that Barcelona's chance of redemption wasn't successful as they crashed out in the semi-finals. So they had to play against Sigma Olomouc in the third place match, the bronze place game. And despite Barcelona having a slow start, Kluivert did actually score the opening goal. Pavel Hapal equalized it. They had the slow start at the end of the first half, but they actually stole the game from there. Dani scored the second goal for Barca. Then Kluivert scored his third goal, and that to a killer blow. And then Anderson finished it off with a penalty goal. And that's it. Barcelona managed to win the third place medal, beating Sigma Olomouc 4-1. And then we move on to the grand finals, which has by far been my favorite grand final here so far. Of course, I've already told you before. So it started with a Massimo Odo penalty. He actually gave Hellas Verona the lead. But then Pedro Barbosa scored the equalizing goal. Then Alberto Gilardino scored the goal which would retain Hellas Verona their lead. Then Sapinto scored the equalizing goal in the 45th minute, just at the stroke of halftime. And then, just at maybe 11 minutes after the second half has started, he actually took the lead. The same player who equalized the game took the lead for Sporting Lisbon. And we thought it was game over here for Hellas Verona, but no. Instead, Emiliano Salvetti scored the equalizing goal in the 70th minute. And it was actually completely neck and neck. Nothing to be separated. But it took a moment of brilliance to actually win the game. And it was none other than Cosato to win the game for Hellas Verona and their first ever successful silverware, beating the Portuguese giants 4-3. And of course, Hellas Verona are the champions of the Brisbane05 Blaster World Club Cup Season 2, as you can see right here. But now let's take a look at the stats here. As you can see, João Pinto scored 10 goals. But since Kluivert have actually scored goals in the third place match, it wasn't counted in the tournament. But since he did score, he actually overtakes Cosato, which makes sure that he's actually now with 8 goals. Cosato is actually now at 7. Gilardino 5. Pavel Hapal did score the goal in the third place match, so he also gets 5 goals. Tying with Gilardino. Raul still remains with 4 goals. And then Overmars 3, Delvecchio 3, Bakayoko 3, Odo 2, Akinbi 2, Sapinto 2, Vilcek 2, and Salvetti 2. And then we have players who have scored only singular goals. Nothing to say here. But João Pinto finishes as the top scorer for that tournament. The Golden Boot winner. But just couldn't win the big trophy here. The big prize, which is the tournament. The Brisbane05 Blaster World Club Cup. But has won an individual tournament, which is of course the Golden Boot winner. Like, established himself as a Golden Boot winner, João Pinto. He has been completely non-stop, like scoring goals for fun. He should have actually deserved to win the tournament. But Hellas Verona spoiled their party, and they actually now are the champions of Season 2. And yeah, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed this one. This concludes the summary and the stats, the top scorer sheet for Brisbane05 Blaster World Club Cup. And I will be taking hiatus for retro FIFA games / classic FIFA games because, of course, we're going to rely on laptop. And when I'm actually recording on the laptop, it is very... Some people... I've actually seen some videos when... and one of my favorite YouTuber has actually tried that. It was completely a very hard thing for me to do. So I'm going to stop that. And I'm going to focus on either doing the Nintendo Switch gameplays or the PS5 gameplays. So yeah. But anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Please make sure to like and subscribe. This is Brisbane05 Blaster here. Signing off.